Chapter 2. It's Lineage time for Marcus and Damien. Last time, on the Dojo at Football State, Damien and Marcus came to Football State their freshman year of college. At the club fair, Damien came across a strange organization called the Dojo at Football State. When the two of them went to their first meeting, they discovered tea practitioners who performed a Chinese tea ceremony called gongfu cha. It was discovered that brewing tea like this produces a mystical energy called cha-chi, only visible to those capable of wielding it. Later, at their first football game, they were ambushed by a disgruntled ex-member named Ahmed, who used cha-chi like a weapon. Senior member of the dojo, Abby, was quick to come in and rescue them by beating Ahmed in a kind of brew-off, which allowed her to build the cha-chi to launch a devastating counterattack with her tea aura. Afterwards, Marcus and Damien decided to join the tea dojo, with Marcus to study under Jack and Damien to study under Abby. Damien and Marcus were walking from their latest class over to the Old English building. The air was still warm, summer still gripping to the campus with all of its waning strength. The leaves on the trees were holding tight as well. Marcus walked hands outstretched behind his back as usual, looking up and watching the birds flying overhead. Damien was vigorously reading through his notebook, filled with various notes he had taken on tea so far. "Hey, do you remember what they said the process for stopping the oxidation of green tea was called?" Damien asked. Marcus hardly looked away from the sky. "I think it was called shotching." Damien scratched his chin. "I thought that was the weird warm feeling and power we unlock when we brew and taste tea." "That's called cha-chi. Do you even pay attention in these lectures?" "I told you, I couldn't make the lecture. I have to try and get my physics lab moved to a different time. I was just reading Gary's notes. He and Tanner have been helping me get prepared. They're really cool guys." "Yeah, they seem like it. You ended up with cool people in your lineage." "Catherine and Natalie seem so nice. What do you mean?" Marcus shook his head. "They're fine. They're just so neutral. Like, I think I would like them more if I had a reason to dislike them, you know?" Damien put his notebook away. "Not at all. What do you mean?" They made their way into the English building and down the steps into the basement. Damien's expression grew more perplexed as he realized he was now following Marcus down there. Marcus looked like he was trying to come up with the words to respond and eventually gave up and said, "They're like a plain grilled cheese. Who would ever order a plain grilled cheese if they were given the option?" "I would. Also, don't compare people to sandwiches," Damien said, as they reached the door. "But more importantly, why are you going down to the dojo? It's Abby's lineage's turn to practice tonight." Marcus looked surprised. "Really? Jack sent us a text last night saying he was moving our practice to today." The door to the dojo was suddenly kicked open. Jack emerged, followed by two women. One of them, Catherine, was fair-skinned with light blonde hair. She smiled gently, her eyes seeming to follow Jack intently. The other was a bit shorter, with darker hair and glasses. She waved enthusiastically at Marcus and Damien upon seeing them. Before any of the five could greet each other, Jack's stomach growled with a furious intensity, as if 100 angry lions were embroiled in conflict in there. "Oh, Marcus, good you're here," he said. "I totally messed up and forgot it was Abby's night for Lineage. It seems like one of you is just going to have to swipe me into the dining hall for dinner, and I'll just have to improvise a lesson for you, and then we can practice another day." "What does Abby's lineage being tonight have to do with getting swiped into the dining hall?" Damien asked. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Swipe yourself in too while you're at it." "I totally would, but I can't. I live off campus and I don't have a meal plan. Come on, man. What are lineage friends for if not getting food together?" He's got you there," Damien said. "He does not!" "Come on, Marcus," Catherine said. "It could be fun to get dinner together. Just a couple friends, some food, sharp utensils." Damien's eyebrow raised. "There's so many great desserts in the dining hall. You don't even have to swipe Jack in. I'll do it," Natalie said. "We have reached a majority vote. Onward, my lineage, to food and friendship," Jack said, before his stomach loudly chimed in to concur. Marcus scowled but walked slowly behind the others as they walked out. He turned his head back towards Damien and mouthed the words, "plain grilled cheese." Damien smiled and shook his head before walking into the tea dojo. Seated next to Abby were two guys around his age. Gary, who was admiring one of the tea bowls, had just ever so slightly curly brown hair, with gentle blue eyes and hands that seemed a little calloused. He used those eyes and hands to admire the craftsmanship of the bowl. Tanner was a bit taller and lankier, hair closer to blonde than brown. He was glancing through a book of Japanese artwork that the tea dojo kept. His face was expressive as he perused the various pieces of art. Suddenly, Gary put the bowl away and sat right next to Abby. "Damien, the Dame Meister! Damien, the Damie Man!" Tanner put the book away, following suit. The dastardly Damien! Dirty Damien! D squared, even. Never groggy Gary, and always terrific Tanner. Great to see you, pals. Hope I didn't keep you waiting. The trio shot finger guns at each other, and then all went into an absurdly complex three-person secret handshake over the table. Abby rolled her eyes warmly at the excitable students. She took a sip of her bowl that she was drinking tea out of. Chachi surged around her as she raised her hand and summoned the cast-iron pot bubbling on the burner to herself. Kettle! The kettle disappeared into smoke and then reappeared in her hand. The trick never failed to put the three of them in awe and draw their full attention to her. You gotta teach us how to do that, Tanner said. My lineage head, Pablo, used to do this trick all the time. He only taught me after I passed the tea practitioner's exam. And when he did, he made me promise to only teach people who passed the exam. She smirked. All this to say, go grab your boxes, gaiwans, gongdabe, and cups, and let's get practicing. The students gave a quick, unrequested salute as they popped up, and then they proceeded over to the wares cabinet and pulled out all of their equipment. The tea cabinets had various sets of wares, with the vast majority being pure white porcelain. Damien eyed that Ahmed's glass, gold-plated gaiwan had been added to the dojo's collection. He recalled the way that Abby had manifested her chachi to engage in a physical confrontation with the man who attacked him. They returned to the table. Abby had a little bit of a mischievous look on her face. She handed out pre-measured leaves on little wooden placards. Take a look, new brews. This is green tea, lucha. Green tea is one of the least oxidized types of tea. Shortly after it's picked, it's dried, withered, and it goes through a toasting process in wax called shaching, otherwise known as kill green, which pauses the oxidation process. She shifted her eyes over to Damien. Damien, how about you take a stab at doing the first brew? The rest of us will wait for you. Me? He asked, voice shaky. During Lineage, the new brewers mostly struggled with how long to allow the tea to steep in the gaiwan. They had previously been instructed when brewing to use their noses to smell for what the experienced members called the aroma peak, which determined the optimal point for the tea to be brewed. The junior practitioners, with no reference point for what exactly that should smell like, often allowed their anxiety to force them into a groupthink, each person waiting and watching the other nervously until someone dared to make the first move and poured out their tea into the porcelain pitcher, and then the others would follow. Abby, an astute teacher, clearly noticed this and wanted to see how Damien performed on the spot. Yeah, you. Unless there's another Damien around here, she said. Go ahead. I want to see how you handle a tea you've never brewed before. Damien breathed deeply. She handed him the tetsubin. This cast-iron kettle, several decades old, donated to the dojo by a benefactor who went by the pseudonym T. Robert. He tried to calm his nerves. He called forth his chachi. Unlike the surges that occurred around the more skillful members, his was a thin outline around his body. He preheated his wares with the hot water, put the tea in, and then took a good smell of it. With that, he began to pour the boiling hot water directly on the green tea leaves, all while Abby had that strange, suspicious look on her face. Meanwhile, over in the freshman dining hall, Marcus was begrudgingly following behind the three other members of his lineage as he walked in. As he badged himself in, he made a note of the person minding the check-in station. He was a young Asian man wearing sunglasses and a backwards hat, in an indoor environment. Marcus thought the man was unusual looking, and that feeling only grew as he gave him a wide and unsettling smile as he spoke to him. Thank you! Hope you have a great meal! Marcus eyed him cautiously and quickly caught up with Jack and the others. His attention was so kept on the strange man that it took him a while to realize what the main special of the dining hall was for dinner. All thoughts of the odd man faded into the background as Marcus growled with a primal rage. Natalie, Catherine, and Jack all stared at him in complete confusion. Are you kidding me? He asked. He stared in utter frustration as the plain grilled cheese and tomato soup was the feature meal of the day. What's wrong, Marcus? Natalie asked. You don't like cheese? The universe is just taunting me, he said. I would rather have the main special be a plate of peanuts right now, and I'm allergic to nuts. Well, speak for yourself, Jack said, stacking sandwich after sandwich and stacking one bowl of soup on his head, balancing it as he held another one. I'm over the moon with this. Catherine looked on at him. That's a lot of food. Make sure you don't take more than you need. That would be kind of wasteful. Jack wagged his finger at her, now balancing the bowl of soup on his wrist so he could make that motion. He made everyone deeply uncomfortable with this high-stakes balancing act. I've never really gone over this, have I? He said. I have an unusual relationship with chachi. Most people train and hone their chachi with meditation or rigorous practices of tea. I do that too, Some extent, but my body is unique that I can actually turn calories directly into additional chachi. I can eat all I want and hardly gain a pound so long as I direct that energy somewhere after. He effortlessly landed all of his plates and bowls onto one long booth in the dining hall. He took up most of one side and gestured for the three of them to come sit down across from him. Marcus begrudgingly took half a sandwich of grilled cheese, attempting to fill up the rest of his plate with the other sides to make up more of his meal. They joined Jack, who started dipping his sandwiches into the soup and savoring each bite of them like it was the greatest thing in the world. True to his word, he started to glow with a faint aura as his body converted the food directly into tea energy. Marcus sat down with the others and started eating, but they hardly had a moment of reprieve when the man at the counter returned. "Hey there! Just wanted to make sure you were enjoying your food, all right?" His wide smile was big and as unnerving as ever. Marcus eyed him cautiously out of the corner of his eye. "Yeah, we're good," he said. "A bit weird for staff at the dining hall to be checking in like that." The man giggled uncontrollably. From his back, he put a mug of light green, steaming liquid on the table. "I just wanted to offer you some tea! Make sure you were having a good meal." "Oh, thank you," Natalie said, grabbing the mug. Catherine swatted it out of her hands. "It's a trap. Look at his hands." The man smirked and cackled wildly as he could barely conceal his chachi. His hands radiated with a blurry outline, indicating his use of tea energy. Marcus was amazed she noticed. It was such a small detail. He thought that she must really have her guard up to be alert to something like that. "What a bright little new brew you are," the mystery man said. "My name is Jeremy Liu. I'm a disgraced Dojo member, and I'm here to eliminate you before you have the chance to join that wretched organization." Marcus laughed back at him. "You must be some kind of moron. Don't you see who we have here with us?" He gestured to Jack, who continued to eat his grilled cheese, completely unfazed by the enemy combatant who revealed himself to them. Marcus did raise an eyebrow at the lack of urgency in his expression. Jeremy kept giggling with twisted delight. "You're the moron! Jack's eating right now. When he's enjoying a wonderful meal, there's nothing that can tear him away from it. I figure I have about 10 minutes to wipe the floor with you before he can even bring himself to focus on the matter at hand." "That's insane. There's no way that's true," Marcus said. "No, he's right," Jack said. "What are you talking about?" "I'm just really hungry, man. I can't focus on anything else. Come on, you guys can hold him off for 10 minutes. Use what I taught you. Here, have this." He tossed Marcus a bag of tea from his pocket. Marcus read the label. "Biluchun. Okay, so this is a green tea. Great," he said. "Got a gaiwan I can use?" Jack shook his head, mouthful of grilled cheese and tomato soup. "What do you mean, no? How am I supposed to brew tea without a gaiwan?" Jeremy interrupted the conversation with a loud cackle. "Oh, you naive little new brew. You don't need a gaiwan to brew tea. I'm not using one. Gong Fu Cha is all about brewing the best tea possible for the people you're brewing for with the wares that you have." "He's right, you know," Jack said. "Stop agreeing with him." Despite this, Marcus took a look around the room to see what he could make work. There was a hot water dispenser and paper cups. He ran over, tossed a few leaves into the cup, and started to fill it up with hot water, directly on the leaves. Jeremy gave a wild smirk back at him during this. Back at the tea dojo, Damien had just handed his cups out to his fellow Lineage members and Abby to taste test. The other two eagerly went in to taste the tea, but Abby looked like she had to steel herself for a moment before trying it. Damien clocked this and carefully tried it too. To his dismay, the tea was bitter and overwhelmingly strong. The mouthfeel was like sandpaper grating on his tongue as he got it to go down. This is what Damien thought tea tasted like before he joined the dojo. He stared sheepishly at Abby, who seemed to surge with chachi. She stuck her hand out towards him, an astral projection of her hand right in front of his face. Damien winced as he expected the worst for this bad performance. Instead, she just lightly flicked him on the forehead. "Better luck next time," she said. "I tricked you a little bit there. All of you are missing an incredibly helpful element when it comes to making green tea. Here, let me show you." She unveiled a small glass pitcher from her pocket, about the size of the Celadon gaiwan she had on her mat before her. From the kettle, she preheated all of her wares, but then poured the water into the pitcher and let it sit there for a while. She used her hand to monitor the temperature of the water. You see, green tea is a little more delicate than other types of tea. It prefers water that's a bit far off from boiling point. If your water's too hot, you can extract too much of the tannins at once, leading to that coarse and unpleasant flavor. Tanner raised his hands. "What are tannins?" "They're polyphenols, compounds found in tea. Rick could tell you more about exactly what that means since he's the chemistry guy and all, but for our purposes, all you need to know is they're astringent as heck." Damien swiftly added a note to his notebook in all caps that read, "Tannins equal astringent as heck." "I have so much to learn." he said. And so, that's the cooling pitcher. What is this called again? Gary asked. He held up the porcelain vessel in the middle. It looked like a smaller, more professionally made gravy pitcher. In past practices, they had poured from their guy one in it. Damien studied it. He recalled that in Abby's clash with Ahmed, both of them poured directly into their cups, maneuvering in a snaking pattern with a little in each. That's a gongdaobai, she said. It means fairness cup. It makes sure that everyone gets tea of equal strength and amount. Tea is all about fairness and respect, after all. What a loser! Jeremy yelled loudly in the dining hall. Marcus's tea fell to the same overdoneness that Damien's in the dojo did. As a result, Marcus felt his leg cramp up as a side effect of Jeremy's chachi. Marcus was now clinging to the table with his arms, trying to support himself on one leg. The other students went about their business, paying no mind to the screaming maniac and the hurt man. Just as it was with the football stadium, they were blinded to the conflict because of the shroud of chachi that hid it from them. Aw, how are you going to brew tea standing like that? I'm going in for the final shot this time. He turned to see Jack still eating his grilled cheese. He shook with trepidation, but when he turned back to face Jeremy, he saw Natalie with arms outstretched in front of him. Hey, you bully, she said. You leave him alone. She grabbed Marcus's paper cup full of leaves and attempted to brew them again. Jeremy kept his wide smile and just moved to make his tea as well. He was awash in chachi, but to his surprise, as he did this, so was she. The two waited patiently before straining their hot beverage and exchanging it. As Jeremy tasted it, his eyes widened. What is this? He asked. How can a newbie like you match my skill level? Natalie seemed to be completely spared from the cramping effect of Jeremy's tea energy. However, she suddenly looked very fatigued and unable to continue. The chachi she was emanating seemed to go away as soon as his did. She had to sit down next to Marcus. I think that took it all out of me. Sorry, Marcus. Jeremy went back to laughing. Oh, I get it. It's like a mirror effect. You can match any level of chachi for as long as you have enough energy in reserve. That would probably be a pretty deadly ability if you had any skill to back it up. Jeremy turned to see Catherine standing up with her own paper cup and tea at the ready. She slanted her cup to avoid pouring any of the hot water directly on the leaves, and turned it in her hand as she did, letting as much of the heat diffuse as possible. I think you've been very rude to my lineage friends. I have to ask you to stop this right now. Marcus groaned and muttered quietly to himself. Bully? Rude? We're fighting for our lives here. Take this seriously. Jeremy went to go fill his mug back up with hot water. He dodged to the side as a fork was chucked in his direction. It narrowly missed the mug, and he managed to fill it up with water, even if delayed by a few moments. Trying to stop me from brewing? Jeremy asked. Not only is that very unsportsmanlike, it just simply won't work. We'll see about that. A glow of chachi emanated from Catherine as her voice changed subtly. Jeremy raised his eyebrows. He watched closely as she studied her tea, smelling it for the telltale sign of readiness. She managed to finish her brew before Jeremy due to the delay. She took a sip and poured some into another cup and chucked it his way. He took a taste, his eyes widening. He whipped his head around. In the instant that he tasted the tea, Catherine had teleported behind him, another fork in hand. She flung it directly at his mug again. This time he had no ability to dodge out of the way, so instead, he just covered his mug with his hand. He let out a grunt as his ring finger took the brunt of the blow, seeming to bend slightly out of shape. She stared at him with cold, calculating eyes, as if she was a different person than the one who had come in with them. Jeremy just shook his head and continued laughing. Jack, your students are quite a treat. It's too bad you're never going to see them after this. He finished brewing and poured some for Catherine. Her hand shook as she tried to fight the urge to taste it, but this conflict compelled her. As she did, her hands both cramped up, rendering them even more damaged than his one was. She writhed on the ground as her hands twisted into unnatural shapes. Marcus kicked a chair towards Jeremy, who just jumped out of the way. As he did this, he created a path to escape, which Marcus quickly ran through. Come on, let's just get out of here, he said. He turned back to his fellow lineage members who were still incapacitated. Jeremy squinted towards him, but eventually he just shook his head and turned his attention back to the two women. He began to pour more hot water onto his tea leaves, planning to launch another attack on them. Marcus clenched his fist. He stared at the exit of the dining hall, and then back towards them. He sighed. Darn it. He ran back over towards them, standing between Jeremy and them. Jeremy cackled. You came back for more? You must really like your friends here. Marcus scoffed. He looked back at them. Well, they both really stuck their necks out for me earlier when I was in trouble. The least I can do is return the favor. Maybe they're not so neutral after all. That's how they rope you in, Jeremy said. What do you mean? The dojo. You form all these bonds so Rick can advance his cause. Do you know what he did to us? Do you know what he did to me? Why all these people exist on the outside of the dojo with resentment towards it? Whatever it is, I'm not going to let you hurt my friends over it. Oh, I will, because let me tell you. He poured out his tea and thrust it towards Marcus, who flinched. However, the mug was intercepted by a small porcelain teacup midair, which then ricocheted over towards Jeremy, who drank it. Jeremy slammed his fist into the table. There was a massive aura of Chachi that seemed to envelop him, and he seemed to struggle against some invisible force for a moment. He shook his head with rage and agitation, as tears filled in his eyes. Rick called me a rotten cherry, he screamed. Marcus stumbled over. He called you a what? A rotten cherry. Didn't you hear me? He said I was poisoning the dojo with my negative frat boy energy. So what if I used to say we needed a better ratio of women at the tea house? So what if I asked every female member where my hug was at? Does that really deserve to be called such a demeaning name as a rotten fruit? A cherry, no less? Marcus brought his hand to his face and groaned. He then suddenly had a thought. Someone had thrown that teacup to intercept the attack. He turned around to see Jack standing up, away from his plate. He walked over and patted Marcus on the shoulder. Catherine and Natalie got up and came over for a group hug. There you go, Jack said. All this was just a team-building exercise. I wanted you all to put your trust in each other. Marcus scowled. You finished off the grilled cheese. There's not a crumb left. You can't tell me that's a coincidence. Jack winked. Can I? No, you can't. Now for you, he said, turning to Jeremy. I think you are a rotten cherry, and I think you might have had some fun playing around with the dining hall mugs. But let's see how you handle something specifically made for tea. He unconcealed a small yellow clay teapot. The teapot looked smooth, like it was constructed out of thousands of completely identical grains of sand. It had a small thin handle on one end, opposite of a very short spout. The lid on it was round and had a round fixture on top of it. The clay itself, still hot from the water recently poured on it, glowed, seemingly having its own chachi inherent to the object. Jeremy stumbled backwards. The smile finally wiped off his face. What? Is that a Dwani? He asked. You can't seriously be whipping out the Yishin clay just because of me. Oh, but I am, Jack said, smiling, before it quickly faded. I'm not messing around, Jeremy. Going after the people I'm responsible for training, during a meal with friends no less? You should have known better. Jack whipped out his thermos of hot spring water. He poured around the outside of the teapot, which sat within a dining hall plate, like a saucer. Following this, he opened the inside and poured the hot water in as well, gently on his leaves. Marcus noticed up close that his leaves were not the stranded green that he had been given earlier. They were thin and flat, each looking like blades in the pot before they were sealed away by the lid. The room burned bright with chachi, more than Marcus had ever seen before. Jeremy had to shield his eyes from the energy. Back over in the dojo, in the middle of a brew, Damien's hair stood up on his neck. He turned towards the window of the room, seeing if he could spot it. An astral finger grabbed him by the ear and directed him back to his gaiwan gently. Focus, Abby said. You don't want an overbrewed tea, do you? No, Abby. Damien went back to smelling his tea, checking to see when it would be ready. He continued looking at Abby and asked a question. Abby, when you were clashing with Ahmed, you never smelled your tea. You just had your hand by it, as if you could sense it. How did you do that? She just smiled at him. There are many secrets and techniques the dojo has to offer for people who pass the exam. You have to start from square one, though. Someday, you might be able to ditch that gong dao bei and pour directly into the cups themselves. He looked surprised as he went to pour his tea out of the gaiwan. It was still hot, and his hand was shaky. It was difficult enough to pour into the pitcher in front of him. He could hardly imagine pouring into such tiny cups and making it so each cup of tea was as balanced as the others. Abby's face looked more serious. The tea and wares we have you brewing with now, they're not the most expensive in the world. However, the tea dojo has some serious benefactors who want to see us succeed. As a result, we have some items here beyond what any college students could ever afford, even if we pulled our money together for them. Damien nodded and handed his tea to his fellow Lineage members. Back in the dining hall, Jack served a cup of a beautiful celadon-tinted tea over to Jeremy. The rotten cherry looked on in fear as he brought the tea to his mouth. The others tasted it as well. It was a crisp and refreshing delight. The tea was the embodiment of springtime, and if Marcus stretched his imagination, the tea tasted like some of his favorite vegetables. The bitterness that was in some of the other tea was non-existent, replaced with a potent but subtle sweetness and toastiness that permeated the entire palate. Marcus raised his fist into the air. "Heck yeah, Jack! Now mess this guy up! Give him the old one too!" Jack laughed a little and shook his head. "That's more Abby's thing. My power is a bit different. I can compel someone to follow my commands. A kind of suggestion Chachi, if you will. The greater the differential between my brew and theirs, the more I can make them act against their own will. Jeremy, why don't you be so kind and smash that mug of yours for me?" Jeremy looked on in horror as his body, seeming smothered by Jack's bright and powerful Chachi, brought his hand into the air and smashed his mug, shattering his ware and leaving him defenseless. Jack again poured hot water on the outside of the clay pot before pouring it inside. "No, please. You have to understand. I didn't mean to say all those things. The dojo is evil. You have to get out of there." The trio just glared over at him, not buying any of this last-minute change of tone from the man who spent the last 10 minutes brutally attacking them with his tea energy. Jack summoned his cups back to him with a snap of his fingers and poured the tea into them. The room was still alight with a blurry aura as Jeremy picked up the cup and brought it to his lips. Jack stuck out his hand with a cup in it, gesturing towards him. "Now, you are going to forget all about the tea dojo. You will forget everyone who you met, everything that happened, and all of your feelings about it. You will never touch tea from now on, and never do anything that would activate your Chachi and set you back down the path to abuse your powers ever again." He drank the tea and his eyes went vacant for a while. After a moment, he appeared to become lucid again. He panicked, seeing the mess of plates, shattered mugs, and loose spoons all over the ground, and immediately started cleaning them up. He paid absolutely no attention to the four of them that stood before him. Jack let out a satisfied sigh, put his teapot away, and then went back in line for more grilled cheese. "Whew, that really got me worked up for seconds," he said. Marcus just stared on in awe at him, as did the other two with him. "He's so powerful," Marcus said. "He's so incredible," Natalie said. "He's so hot," Catherine said. The other looked at her with confused glances. "I mean, his tea was so hot and so good. He's so good at brewing it." She did seem to secretly continue biting her lip for a while as she watched him get more food. They returned to their table and finished up eating. They made their way back to the tea dojo for the real lesson. Damien was just about done washing his wares from practice when he saw Marcus coming in the door. He put down what he was doing and walked over. "Hey, bud, how was dinner? Did they have anything good at the dining hall?" Marcus paused. He still had the taste of plain grilled cheese lingering in his mouth. He looked over towards Catherine and Natalie, who were getting their wares picked out and ready for brewing. He smiled to himself for a moment, before returning to Damien. "You know, it actually wasn't so bad." Thank you so much for listening to this chapter of Tea Dojo at Football State. If you enjoyed, please rate the podcast, give it a like on YouTube, or share with someone else you think might also enjoy. You can stay up to date with Tea Dojo at Football State by following us on social media. There'll be D² stories on just about any of the major platforms. If you prefer reading to listening stories, also follow us on Substack, also D² stories. Thanks again for listening, and I hope to have you listen again next week.